Welcome back, friends. And just to let you know what's going on MGoBlue Podcasts, it's Olympic week, Team Canada week on MGoBlue Podcasts. Defend the Block with my partner here, Brian Boesch. He features women's basketball freshman Silas Swords. She played in every single game for Team Canada in Paris. And then I had a chance to sit down with silver medalist and Michigan rowing star Abby Dent as our guest on Conquering Heroes. That will come out on Thursday. And just let me tell you right now, it was one of the greatest conversations I've had with a Michigan athlete. And if you're watching this right now on the Wolverines, Michigan's Athletics YouTube page or on my Twitter account, there's going to be a couple of video clips posted of that conversation. And she had maybe the greatest flex of all time because she does have her silver medal with her. And Brian, I know you've had a chance to see it. My partner, Brian Boesch, your thoughts on the flex of Abby Dent?
I mean, she had it right next to her. You were talking, it was probably 20 minutes into the conversation. And I was thinking, well, should I keep this into the audio only version? And I'm like, heck yeah, I'm keeping it in the audio only version. She had the box and the medal next to her. It was awesome. And I mean, it's amazing what that medal represents. In talking with Silas Swords, Team Canada did not win a medal. But you always see on a lot of Olympians, the tattoo of the 5 rings. She said, Silas did, she's going to get it. She doesn't know where at this point. Just so much meaning to not only competing in the Olympics, but then succeeding in it and medaling in it. It's just it's an incredible accomplishment. And the fact that Michigan has always had so much in the way of success, so much representation in the games, it's pretty special.
It was so cool. And I mean, I've told the story too about, my national championship ring goes with me everywhere. And I thought I was pretty cool until Abby Dent pulled out the silver medal. And I thought, one is not like the other, but in our respective,
it is like the other. It is. I mean, let's face it. I do like
second best in the world versus the best in college football.
Well, way to sell yourself there, John.
Yeah. Hey, trust me. I understand where that lives in my heart, but in regards to what it means on a world stage, and she does talk. I'm not going to give away the entire podcast, but the sacrifice that she made for a year and a half leading up to it, and what it was like to be in the Olympic Village, everything around the Olympics. It was such an entertaining and meaningful conversation. So make sure you check out Conquering Heroes on Thursday.
And I'll tell you this too. It's surprising the wide range of ages in rowing. It's an interesting dynamic, sport to sport in the Olympics, of the potential time frame one can have. So yeah, check it out on Thursday. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend winning a game like Michigan won on Saturday at the Big House. And let's talk about it on our 7 from 77. And we start with some of the under the radar plays from this one. If you go back to Saturday's post-game episode, break it all down with the crew, great interviews with Jason Avant, who on the video stream will join us coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I want to put some things into perspective and make sure in this cycle that is September in college football, we don't lose some of the, silver, bronze medal style plays. Because yes, Kalel Mullings had several plays we will all remember. Sharon Moore said on the Monday radio show, yeah, that 63-yarder to set up the touchdown to win it. That's a Michigan legend run. Of course, Will Johnson's pick 6. We'll remember that. Take out the obvious ones. What are 1 or 2 plays you want to make sure fans remember from that win that set up the chance for heroics from Kalel, Will, and others?
Well, so Sharon Moore always talks about, the number one thing, and that's possessing the ball. The reason that they moved to Alex Orji was Davis Warren had thrown 6 interceptions in 3 games. All right. That's not a great job of protecting the ball. So you then start thinking about, okay, what type of decisions is Alex Orji going to make? And I think 2 of the best decisions that he made were ones where they weren't completions. And if you go into I think it was the first quarter, the flea flicker. And I know that he is thinking in the huddle, as soon as that play comes in, all right, I get to unleash my arm. I'm going to show everybody they were wrong. I'm going to show them that I'm a passing quarterback as well. And you know that he wanted it. But what he wanted versus what was best for the team it didn't win out. So what was best for the team was that it wasn't there. It was covered downfield. So he tucked it, ran it, and picked up, I think it was 6 or 7 yards. That to me was an under the radar great decision, because if he throws it at best, it's incomplete. At worst, it's a turnover. And then you go to the second down, second and goal, last opportunity to win the game after the Khalil Mullins 63-yard run. They run a play action. And again, I know for him, he wants to prove to everyone, I could fight, I could fit this ball into tight spaces. I could be a passing quarterback. For him to throw that ball away, best decision for the team. Clearly the best decision. Not an easy one to make when you're talking about, what is best for the team versus what I want to show I can do. I thought that was an under the radar great decision. And we could debate the play call, but that was a great decision by Alex Orji. And then I'll give you one that happened in the second quarter. First series that Greg Crippen is in. And I used this one on Jansen Vision on Inside Michigan Football Sunday morning, where he reaches the nose. It's a front side nose. It's a run to the right, and he reaches the nose. Not an easy block to make, especially if you've been, sitting on the bench for the first couple of series. He comes in, reaches the nose, cuts the defense in half, and Khalil Mullins ends up going, I think it was for, 10 or 12 yards. That block set it up, and it also showed everything else for the rest of the game, what was going to be available to Kirk Campbell, Sharon Moore, and this coaching staff in regards to, well, if we get the center to reach the nose, we defense in half, there's going to be a lot of ground that we can gain. And I thought it was a great job by Kripp on that play of letting the coaches know, hey, I can make this block.
Also, Josaiah Stewart had several. He's our guest coming up later on.
None of those are under the radar.
Yeah, well, for sure. But I'm saying, play 4 for him, the fourth best play for him was an under the radar impact play. There were several big ones, but he had a ton. So we'll talk about some of those with him later on the audio version of In the Trenches presented by Meijer. Number 2, we talk about putting plays into perspective. Let's put this game into perspective. We talked a lot about how it feels unique and weird that this is a conference game, the Big Ten opener, USC coming out here, all that. Where to you, John, does this sit in terms of this century wins in September? Because during this Big Ten championship run of 3 straight years, the only power conference team that Michigan beat in September that had any oomph to it brand-wise was Washington, and they lost the previous week before coming to Ann Arbor to an FCS team. To me, the only one that I it's tough for me to put this one ahead of would be, of course, 2011 Notre Dame, first game under the lights of the big house. Of course, is it in the ballpark? I think so. But 2013 Notre Dame under the lights too. Yeah, that's one. A different style of game and excitement and satisfaction was the blowout in South Bend in 06 en route to that undefeated start. And then the only other one that I thought of, 02 Washington, but I don't think that could be on this list because it was just frustrating with all the missed field goals. Yeah, Michigan won it, but it wasn't a fun journey to get to that point. How would you put 2024 USC in with those games and others?
Well, first night game under the lights, that game is number one. And it because it was Notre Dame. And not that they're any bigger or smaller than USC, but it means more to Michigan fans to beat Notre Dame. They just faced them more in South Bend and here. So to have that as the first night game and the way that it ended in such dramatic fashion, Michigan ends up winning. There's nothing to this point in September, and especially in the last few years, where nothing comes even close. There were some that could have been impactful games in September, but everything fizzled out after that. And I go to, the first year of Rich Rod, number 9, after having lost to Utah and Notre Dame, number 9, Wisconsin comes to town. And this is on the heels of getting basically run over by Notre Dame. All of a sudden, it felt like things clicked, and they beat Wisconsin in Ann Arbor. They were the 9th-ranked team in the country. But after that, obviously, the rest of the season kind of fell apart. So they weren't able to capitalize it. Year after that, they start out 4-0, and that fourth game, I think it was the third game, number 18 Notre Dame comes to town. So all of a sudden, hey, there was a transition year. You start out 4-0, and one of those is a big win against Notre Dame. But again, everything fizzled out after that. So those are obviously on the periphery, but it just goes to show you there's not a lot of great matchups, haven't been a lot of great matchups this century in September. And to then know that, hey, Michigan had that chance against Notre Dame, and they've been very good in night games since. I think there's only been 2 losses. But then to be able to play and welcome USC into the Big Ten, it was big for Michigan, but I think it was big for Sharon Moore and his program.
2 that just missed the cut calendar-wise, 2 Wisconsin games going up there in 2021. That was on October 2nd. I had to check to make sure. And the Jordan Lewis game in 2016 was October 1st. So those would at least be, again, I wouldn't put either of those on 2024 USC or 2011 Notre Dame, but they would have been worth mentioning had they just slid in a little bit earlier. All right, number 3 on our 7 from 77. We hear the phrase a ton. You say it plenty. We want to play Michigan football. You want a specific game-long example. Tough to find many that were better examples of that: controlling the line of scrimmage, running the football, delivering late, being clutch. So from all of that, the embodiment of Michigan football, how did you see all that show up on tape with the dominance up front, with the ability to run, with the ability to, I know there were some people in the big house who were lacking a little bit of confidence there when that go-ahead touchdown drive started so far away. How did you see that all as you watched it back 1 or 2 or 25 times?
Well, I mean, the nervousness that everybody had was in the first half, you moved the ball at will, and they could not stop the run. And defensively, you completely took them out of their game plan. This is a team that wanted to come here and throw the ball around, yet they couldn't hold it on a 5-step drop without getting their quarterback, killed. And so now all of a sudden you get into the second half, you think it's going to be more of the same, yet I think you had 9 yards of total offense in the third quarter. You hadn't been able to pick up a first down until Khalil Mullins took the ball, and you would even turn the ball over deep in your territory that led to the go-ahead touchdown. So there was so much that was making Michigan fans nervous, and then all of a sudden Khalil Mullins takes over, and it was. Sometimes you just need a special effort. You got it from Will Johnson. You got it from Josaiah Stewart, Mason Graham. But when it comes down to it, you've got to have a guy in the biggest moments that steps up and just says, I'm going to make a play no matter what. And Khalil Mullins did that. And it was one that was set up early in the game, even the first play of the game. I asked Sharon Moore about it on Monday night. And he said, we wanted to make sure that we set the tone early on both sides of the ball, but especially offensively, to give our line a little bit of confidence, to give the back some confidence. They had double team set up front, and it was just smash mouth football. And they got back to that soon as Khalil ran off 63 yards. And it's just, every game is going to be a chess match, and we've seen it. We saw it last year against Penn State, where Sharon was, the one calling the plays, but he was the head man on the sidelines and going, straight runs from the second quarter on. It just, sometimes that's what the game dictates, and you do what you have to do to win the game. Sharon Moore did it in that game, and there were performances by players. This time it was Khalil Mullins and Josaiah Stewart that just put the team on their back and said, we refuse to lose.
Number 4 on our 7 from 77. Let's look forward a little bit. When you come up with 32 yards passing, fewest for Michigan since 1987, that's probably not a sustainable model moving forward. Now, you run for 6.3 yards a carry, you rack up almost 300 yards. You can do it at times, but let's face it, the schedule looks even tougher now after having a month's worth of return. In particular, I don't think a lot of people circled mid-October at Illinois as a pivot point for the Big Ten season. I think it kind of is now because of what the Illini have done. So how can Michigan continue to emphasize the running game, which we know that's the Michigan football they want to play, but still be able to further develop Alex Orji so that, yes, some of his biggest plays were not doing too much, but at some point in this schedule, he's going to have to do what might seem too much. How do you get him to that point?
Well, I mean, we'll find out more about Illinois this weekend. They travel to State College and play Penn State. We'll find out a lot about both of those programs and those teams this year. But when you think about Michigan moving forward, they're going to have to, at some point, allow Alex Orji to be a passing quarterback. And hey, let's get up a couple of scores on Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be an easy task, and then all of a sudden, hey, you've got a little bit of a buffer. Let's start pulling out some passes and work on things at game speed. That's the ideal situation. I don't know if that happens or not, but they're a team that does not defend the run very well. Washington, kind of the same thing. We know, in terms of physicality, what to expect from that program. And I know a new head coach, a lot of new players in terms of that program, very much like Michigan this year. So the identity isn't necessarily known, but Jed Fish is their quarterback, and we're very familiar with him. But every single week, you add a little bit more to Alex Orji in regards to the expectations and the playbook. And he's got the whole playbook, right? He was there all summer. He's been here for a couple of years, so he's very familiar with it. He's worked on everything, but there's a difference between performing it on State Street versus Main Street. I know Doug loves to use that cliche, and it's very true, where you can perform it at practice, but then when it comes time for game time and the speed is a little bit different, you have to be able to adjust to the speed. The pressure is different. You've got to be able to handle the pressure. So let's just add a little bit more to Alex Orji this week against Minnesota. On the road against Washington, add a little bit more to what you had this week. Add a little bit more against Illinois, a little bit more against Michigan State, so that by the end of the year, you've got a full complement of plays of knowing exactly what he does well and what he doesn't do well. Excuse me. Live radio without a cough button. The beautiful thing is I think he can make those adjustments and that progression. I think he can get to where you're looking at Alex Orji in 6 weeks and saying, wow, look at the improvement. And it's really just about becoming comfortable. He's proven that he'll make good decisions. Now, what you want to make sure is that you don't put too much too early, but you give him enough so that he's not playing tight, that he's not questioning what he's doing in regards to the decisions he's making, when he throws the ball, when he keeps it. But the beautiful thing is, if he's always going to err on running the ball, he can do that pretty damn well. So it's some of those are called passes that he just turns into runs.
So number 507 from 77. If you are building out at least the early runway for Alex Orji getting acclimated as a starting quarterback, this would be the way to do it. After what happened last week, Iowa kind of did the exact same thing statistically to Minnesota this past week. Cade McNamara, 62 yards passing. Iowa still won 31-14 because Caleb Johnson rumbled for 206 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, all that on just 21 carries. I mean, basically, it was Kalel Mulling's stat line with a little bit more in terms of having opportunities because the game was more out of hand. So just your early impressions of Minnesota and a rivalry matchup. This is one that it's weird to say because it was a game that was played pretty much every year for a while, but this is the first time these two teams are playing in back-to-back years since 2011 to 2014. And let's face it, probably could be one of the last times that they play back-to-back years.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you keep the little brown jug. You never know how long it's going to be, on one of these campuses. So if you don't have a future game scheduled, make sure it stays in Ann Arbor. And trophy games do matter to college athletes, to college coaches, and to the fan base. But I think the recipe will be very similar, but it's going to be an even tougher task for Minnesota because Cade McNamara doesn't, strike fear into anyone as a runner. It's not that he's not mobile. He just isn't as dynamic as Alex Orji is. So now all of a sudden you've got a defense that struggles against the run, but you can't commit all the resources to stopping the running back. You also have a very proficient runner at the quarterback position. It's going to make things a little bit easier for the offensive line, but moving forward, you're going to have to show that you can throw the ball. So why not, since he's proven he can make good decisions, just go ahead, call a couple of pass routes, and take a couple of deep shots. Let's also see what Samaj Morgan, Fred Moore, all of Tyler Morris, like all of these guys are very capable receivers, and they can get behind defenses. So use what you do as an advantage, the play action pass. And I just mentioned, if it's not there, you still have a run with Alex Orji. So you can become a very difficult defense to defend, but at some point you're going to have to show the threat of a pass and not just a 7-yard out or a wide receiver screen. You're going to have to show a down the field threat. So whether it's once a quarter, it's once a half, I don't care. Tee it high, let it fly, chuck it deep. Let's see what happens.
That's a great way of putting it, no doubt. All right, before we continue on our 7 from 77, John, let Michigan fans know that their favorite craft brewery is also a proud sponsor of Michigan Athletics. Oh,
yeah, you can find it in the big house. Brian, Founders Brewing Company has been brewing high-quality beers, highly rated beers like All Day IPA, Michigan Pilsner, and their new Mortal Bloom right here in the great state of Michigan for over 25 years. As a proud sponsor of Michigan Athletics, they're here to help celebrate every Wolverine win with the perfect beer in hand. Whether you're at the game, tailgating, or watching from home, there's nothing like enjoying a Michigan-made beer from Founders. Learn more about their community involvement and where to find your go-to game day beer at foundersbrewing.com.
That's foundersbrewing.com. All right, number 6 on our 7 from 77. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but Illinois, probably the biggest Big Ten takeaway outside of what happened in Ann Arbor. The win at Nebraska in overtime, 31-24. Happy weekend in the Jansen household. Yeah, that was a heck of a performance by Brett Bielema and the Illini on the road in a hostile environment. I mean, Nebraska, they bring it, and Illinois went there and kept them quiet, as you like to discuss.
Yes. Many weeping children passing through the hallowed halls of Memorial Stadium, as they have been for a number of years in Lincoln, Nebraska. But it was a great game. And here's the thing about both of those programs. For Nebraska, I think they are a team that is only going to continue to improve. Young quarterback, sometimes going to make some young mistakes, but he's also going to make some phenomenal plays. And we've seen all of that in the first 4 weeks of Nebraska's season. The same can be true for Illinois. Now they've got a second-year quarterback in Drew Altmaier, who is shown that he's much more comfortable in the offense, operating the offense. He's making checks at the line of scrimmage. He's getting them in the right play. He's performing as a passer. They've always had a decent run game. Now it's a little bit more enhanced. So this is a very physical program. And you know that based on what Brett Bielema preaches every single day, whether he was at Wisconsin, whether he was at Arkansas, now at Illinois, it is going to be one that is based on you got to win the line of scrimmage. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You got to win the line of scrimmage, and you got to run the football. So it's building up in a couple of weeks to be a great matchup, and we're going to find out a lot about Illinois this week as they travel to State College to take on Penn State, which I've mentioned already.
It was an interesting way that Wink Martindale put it on our pregame show this past week. When talking about USC's running game, he said it looked like they added to their running game knowing that they were going into the Big Ten. Because, yes, Oregon's still going to pass a lot. I don't care what league they're in, right? USC is going to want to try to recruit athletes. They're going to try to be up-tempo or high profile with their skill weapons. But you can't just completely forget about the run game if you're in this league, because you've got grinded out teams like Illinois. They're just going to be there. So will be really interesting to watch. Otherwise, Ohio State and Penn State cruise as heavy favorites. This weekend, some intriguing games. Friday night, another really interesting one. Again, not probably for Big Ten contention or playoff, but again, we talk about, all right, what's a good season for a team that was picked to finish around 10th and they slide up to 6th? Washington at Rutgers. Obviously, we'll be keeping our eyes on that because the trip to Seattle is next weekend. Illinois, Penn State, you mentioned it. Also, Ohio State at Michigan State. USC hosting Wisconsin. What else stands out to you in the Big Ten?
Well, I love the USC and Wisconsin matchup. And, it's going to be USC at home. Wisconsin making the trip out there. And Wisconsin, at some point, is going to have to get back to their roots, especially with their quarterback down for the season. I know that they want to continue to push the ball downfield, the air raid offense, but it's a program, it's a fan base, everything that they've ever known and believed in is on the ground. And I think after watching what Michigan did, it'll be interesting to see, what type of game plan they put together. Michigan State and Ohio State. I think it's very interesting to continue to see the progression and expectations kind of shift around a little bit for Michigan State in the first year of Jonathan Smith. This one is in East Lansing. There's no question that Michigan State's going to be a heavy favorite, but you have a team offensively and defensively, heavy underdogs in Michigan State, that is going to go out there and play as loose and as free as possible because there's nothing at risk. And when you have a quarterback in Aiden Childs that can make the plays that he can make, and if he protects the football, that's everything that we talk about, especially in the Big Ten, because you're going to have limited possessions. It's going to be about time of possession. Field position is making sure that you possess the football. If he does a better job of taking care of the ball, in no way, shape, or form am I predicting that they even come close to beating Ohio State, but I do think they can put up a fight.
Should be interesting to watch. We will keep track of that. Number 7 on our 7 from 77 national topics from the weekend. 50 or more points for Texas, Ole Miss, and Miami in big wins. Tough day in the state of Oklahoma. The Sooners lose their SEC opener, still weird to say, to Tennessee. And the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, they have a rally fall short against Utah in a pair of ranked-on-ranked matchups. To me, the biggest takeaway of all that to start, Tennessee's pretty darn good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look at Tennessee, now everybody was wondering, all right, for Tennessee, you look at their opponents in the first 4 games, or first 3 games, Chattanooga, NC State, which has proven not to be very good, Kent State, and they averaged, it was like 63 points a game. Like, how legitimate is it going on the road to Norman, Oklahoma, and to be able to play the style of football they played? And I thought defensively, that was the biggest thing for me, is to watch Tennessee defensively. Nico, their quarterback, he's going to make plays, and their offense is going to be under Josh Heupel. You're going to score some points. Defensively for Tennessee is where I really think that they showed that they belong in the playoff conversation. And we'll learn a lot about Alabama and Georgia this weekend because they'll face off, both coming off of bye weeks. Don't count out Tennessee as a dark horse to win the SEC.
Yeah, bye week for the Vols this week. Their next big test is at home against Alabama on October 19th, and then they go to Georgia November 16th. Those are really the 2 big tests, and frankly, again, as we talk about trying to determine just how the playoff looks and at-larges, if they go 10-2 and lose those 2 games but don't get blown out, win the rest of their games, they're probably in. And it's a big reason why for this game that they got the win, plus they scheduled an NC State non-conference to at least have a matchup with another Power 4 team.
Ranked at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Only other SEC, Missouri surviving Vanderbilt in overtime. That kind of out of nowhere. Not great.
Missouri survived Boston College the week before, and everybody's trying to figure out Boston College. How good are they? Because they beat Florida State. Obviously, they beat Michigan State. Just trying to figure out how good and what type of a threat when a team faces Boston College they're going to be this year. And obviously playing against Missouri, losing by only 1 score. And then Missouri just eking out a win against Vanderbilt. I mean, both of those teams could be a little bit better than anticipated coming into the season.
Coming up this weekend, Louisville at Notre Dame, Oklahoma State at Kansas State, couple of teams coming off losses. And then you mentioned it, Georgia at Alabama. This is the first time that those 2 teams are playing in front of a sold-out crowd since 2015. They played during the pandemic year. First time they're playing in front of a sold-out crowd in a home site, either Tuscaloosa or Athens, beg your pardon. 2015 was Mark Richt's last season. If you'd have told Georgia fans that this is how the time would stretch from then till now, boy, I mean, it's easy to forget. I mean, Georgia was in the wilderness for a while, and now they're one of the powers.
Yeah, and don't underestimate Utah, Arizona. Utah's big win over Oklahoma State, I thought was huge without their starting quarterback Cam Rising. That one was at Oklahoma State, and they're definitely in the catbird seat in the Big 12 because they've got a ranked matchup against BYU later in the season. They've got and Iowa State, but I don't see any speed bumps along the way. I think Kyle Whittingham has done a great job of transitioning to the Big 12, which wasn't a big stretch from coming from the Pac-12. They've been one of those teams that's always been kind of on the fringe of the playoffs, but it looks to me like they've got the clear advantage of winning Big 12 and getting a bye in the playoffs.
We will get to, on the audio version, Josaiah Stewart here in a moment. On the video live stream, Jason Avant coming up in moments. First, time is running out for fans to sign up for Foguth Financial Group's next night out at the Big House on Thursday, October 3rd. The September event sold out, so Foguth, the proud wealth management partner of Michigan Athletics, added this event in a couple of weeks. You can learn strategies for managing the risks of retirement, enjoy complimentary dinner and drinks, have a chance to win door prizes, and get an exclusive chance to tour Michigan Stadium. Sign up for the event Thursday, October 3rd by heading over to MGoBlue.com/bighouse. That's MGoBlue.com/bighouse. And we told you, limited seats available because the first one sold out. All right, on audio, let's get to Josaiah Stewart. On video, we welcome in our sideline reporter, our good friend, and a Michigan legend, Jason Avant. What's up, Jason?
What's going on, gents? Great to see you guys' face today. Happy about a win. I've been stoked all week.
So, yeah, I mean, it's as big as they get. What was the biggest win that you had in your time at Michigan?
I don't know. Ohio State, probably. We had them here, and they were ranked really high. I got carted off the field earlier in that ball game. And I remember Carl Tabb coming in and catching a couple of big ones, Braylon having a big game. But Ohio State here at home was probably one of my bigger ones.
I will say, Jason, you mentioned this several times to players after the Arkansas State win. Michigan USC was a rivalry for you after playing them in the Rose Bowl. I know this was an important one for you this past Saturday. So what was it like on the field after some of the big plays? The Will Johnson pick six, the Kalel Mullings 63-yarder, then the fourth down conversion, the final short on fourth down for USC. Take us inside what you were feeling, sensing, hearing on the sidelines after that win.
Well, so let's talk about like the lead up to the game. There was this like very eerie feeling most of the day. It seems like the fans, and also there was a little bit of doubt about the team and Alex Orji, and rightfully so. That's the nature of the beast. When I was walking around doing the tailgates, everyone was uncertain and unsure. And then the game starts, right? The game starts and you see Michigan go ahead and they begin to take over the game with the defensive line and the offensive line, because that's the indication for me. All the other things is great. The receiver play, the running back play, the quarterback play, but whoever's winning the trenches in those first couple of series is a good indication on where the game is going to go forward. So seeing the fans get enthusiastic and start to get the energy and start to believe that Michigan will be in this game, and not only in this game, they could win this game, was huge for the team and also just for the morale of the stadium. But going through some of the plays there to see Khalil break through, talking about a big guy, and I talk about it all the time with him. The thing that impresses me most is that his feet just are so light for his size. Usually there's like this bumbling effect with a guy that big, and it's hard for him to dance in a hole and be able to see the hole, and he lumbers. No, he's a quick-footed guy that seems like he's in the right spot at all times. And I thought we should have got him the ball a little bit more in that game. But that 50-yard run was a great starter to it. And then the Will Johnson pick six, just his eyes knowing when to anticipate those plays. Very rarely does he get caught by being aggressive. So there was a lot of plays in that game. But I thought the hero of the game to me above everybody else. I know Khalil had a great game, but Josaiah Stewart whooped butt the entire game. He kicked, I can't say the words, but he kicked tail the entire game. The left tackle there for them, I'm sure he's seeing number 0 in his dreams right now, running circles around him. So I thought Josaiah Stewart played a great game.
Yeah, I thought his rush plan was perfect, and he didn't even have to get to it until later in the game. And sometimes when you get to that rush plan, right, that's you're looking for that 3rd and long at a key moment. But he was beating that tackle at the snap of the ball for the first 3 quarters, and then late 3rd quarter he brought the inside move, which wasn't even against the starting tackle. It's the guy that they brought in to get it done. Yeah, I mean it's he was able to do what he wanted at will, and I thought he affected that game more than anything, because the one thing that concerned all Michigan fans, and I'm sure it concerned the Michigan coaches, was the passing game for USC. You're talking about Miller Moss having 4, 5, 6 different weapons, whether it's out of the backfield or receivers that he could throw the ball to, and they just never were able to get into a rhythm offensively.
No, they weren't, because he was running for his life most of the game, and there were definitely guys open, scot-free open, down the field. But again, it doesn't matter if the D-line is getting there, and the D-line took it very personal. They were able to stop the run majority of the first half. The USC was able to pop some runs late, but there was the run game was non-existent, that first half, and I thought that was the key to the game, the defensive line play, and then your boys up front.
Our boys up front, Jason.
Our boys. I gotta give Jon his credit.
No, it was great to see, especially the first play of the game, where they were able to create some double teams, gain some confidence with that offensive line, and I thought that was the best game that they had played. Now, they weren't required to do a lot of the things that they've struggled with, which is number one, pass blocking. They just didn't have to do it, but even when they were required to pass block, it was play action pass. They had the one flea flicker. That game plan allowed the offensive line to really lean into what they do best, and that's be aggressive.
Well, here's the thing about offensive line play that I've always known on all the teams I've ever been on. If you give the offensive line a bone when it comes to running the ball, let them smack some people around, they do a lot better in pass protection. I don't know. Every team I've ever been on has been the same way. It's like, coach, the offensive line, the number one guy going to the offense coordinator. Hey, run the ball. We're tired of getting hit here in pass protection. Let us hit someone.
Yeah, and you can always argue, does the pass set up the run set up the pass? At Michigan, the run sets up the pass.
I do. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, finish your thought, Jason.
I do have this, because we run the ball so effectively. And this may be transitioning us a bit. How will this affect us recruiting going forward, though? We want to win at all costs. That's the goal. The goal is to win the game. But I'm sitting there when I sit back and I look at it and I evaluate the game, I'm like, how does a receiver feel about coming to Michigan? How does a quarterback feel about coming to Michigan?
Well, that's going to be a great question. Yeah.
I'll give you one example real quick, Jon, because yes, that definitely is a concern. I do think that scouting and the ability to see the entire picture helps Michigan a little bit in this regard. Michigan will probably never be wide receiver U, right? I mean, LSU's got that going. I mean, gosh, we saw a few of those LSU guys in the NFL thrive this past weekend. Malik Neighbors is an absolute force of nature for the Giants. But Nico Collins did not have a whole lot in the way of college production, yet he's turned into one of the top receivers in the NFL. Donovan Peoples-Jones didn't have a 100-yard game at Michigan. He's at least carved out a career for himself. I know he hasn't done much with the Lions, but he's had several opportunities. There's no doubt it's a concern, but does that take you away from the top 100 receivers? I don't think so. Does it take you away from the top 10? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So when I look at it, I'm like, I'm always worried about that, because eventually, and I love the run aspect of it, we're going to have to be able to throw the ball at some point.
Well, so and it comes down to, and this is obviously not a guy that I don't think we're going to see anytime soon, but Jaden Davis. If we're going to recruit receivers, how do you sell him as the quarterback of the future? How do you sell him as the guy that's going to be able to get all of the receivers the ball, operate the offense so it's not 75% run and 25% pass, but it becomes more balanced in that in just in terms of numbers?
Yeah, and that's your point, is trying to basically sell the future to, you know, it's not just the guys that you want to come, it's keeping your guys. Like, we've lost Xavier Worthy, we've lost a lot of guys that are tearing it up across the college football scene and also at the NFL level. So I'm just always worried about that, because I know running the ball is very, very important, and that's our way. And I think that's the way that Michigan is going to stay on top, because if you can recruit offensive linemen and defensive linemen, of course, that's the most important. Everything else is window dressing. That's the most important, but we're going to need it to beat that team down south eventually.
And I do think that the recruiting philosophy, the culture of a Sharon Moore-led program, in year one, it was always going to be a continuation of what was already established, because Michigan's coming off winning a national championship, and a lot of those pieces are in place. Now, you know, we'll see what it looks like in 3 years. It is a fair question for the future and for as soon as this week, Jason, about the passing game, because, you know, there's no doubt Michigan will not be able to run the table if they're only throwing for 32 yards in some of the games later in the season. So how do you think Michigan can continue to lean on the run, but build up Alex Orji as a passer, continue to keep the Samajes, the Tyler Morrises, et cetera, Colson Loveland, when he comes back, able to get their numbers, have their productivity? How does that look, not just on Saturdays, but leading up to games?
Well, the thing about the game, this past week's game versus USC, what it did was it gave like a new energy into the program, because you beat a team that was really a good team, especially an offensive team. It was a really great offensive team that we were able to limit in a lot of ways. But it also bought you time. Bought you time in the practice facility, bought you time against, you know, Minnesota and whoever else, because you have Washington coming up, which is going to be a very, very, very tough game. And Minnesota may be as well. But like I said, you give Alex Orji a little bit of time to get some things that he may like. And usually that's going to be nakeds. That's going to be bubble screens. That's going to be shot plays. This is the thing that I would like a little bit more, when people are squeezing us. And USC did it a lot in that game, where they're squeezing us in a single high and it's one-on-one outside, and you got a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Just pop the ball up, drop back, look straight at the safety, and pick a side and throw it up to one of the guys. It's college, right? And all you have to do is tell the receiver, no matter what the circumstance is, you come down with the ball and nobody else does, right? We don't care if it's a 15-yard penalty. Don't let them get the ball, right? But those are some of the plays that I think that will change the direction of the program if you give guys shots on the outside, because you're getting so much attention in the run game. There's opportunities to throw the ball down the field. But yes, you're going to have to do more screens. You're going to have to do more shallow cross and rub routes, man type of routes. And you got to do them a little bit more frequently than we're doing it. We can't be 80-20 run. Against Minnesota, because Minnesota is giving up 200 yards rushing, against Iowa, 275 yards rushing. So it may work there, but against, the upper echelons of the Big Ten, Washington's, Oregon, Ohio State, it won't work like that. Even Michigan State won't work like that.
So, I mean, I agree with you. And there was a couple of 3rd and 3 situations where I really felt like if they're in man coverage on the outside and they're packing the box, everyone knew we're going to run the football. At some point, you tell Samaj Morgan, hey, get off the ball, beat your man, and you're going to have a shot at catching a ball. Even if it's not complete, you got to show that threat. Fred Moore, same thing. Hey, we overthrew you against Arkansas State, and that was Alex Orji throwing the ball. You just keep running, and we're going to throw it up. And like you said, whether you come down with it or no one comes down with it, but we're going to give you that because you're going to have to loosen up the defense a little bit. There's going to be 8-9 men box. And it's, even if you have a mobile quarterback, those become very difficult to run against on any consistent basis.
Yeah, he has to be really good at a few routes. If he can learn to put the ball in position to be caught on a fade route, and if he can perfect a slant throw, that'll take us a long way. Like an outside slant throw. Those two throws alone can drastically change the offense, because that can take care of a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 when you need it. A guy beating one-on-one coverage on the outside, which we're our best man-to-man guy so far is Fred Moore. So having him out there on the isolated side against one of their corners, running, being able to run a slant, being able to run a go, in those situations will pay a lot of dividends. And then you can like go into an inside fade and a slant combination. There's things that you can do in order to pass the ball with Alex Orji.
All right. We encourage folks to get in their questions here on YouTube or on X. More than 100 watching on YouTube, more than 300 on X. So super thankful to all those who are here. We start with the obvious question from A-Train 132. Who's this Jason Avant character? What does he know about Michigan football? Great question, A-Train 1. No, I'm just kidding. Later in the comments, he asked for your autograph. So I think he likes you. From BK, Jason, when you watch our receivers, do you see good separation even if we aren't throwing much? So take fans through what you're seeing from the Samajes, the Tyler Morrises, the others in that regard.
Earlier, when we played Texas, there wasn't a bunch of separation. I can't tell you that it was. I think it's a mixture of things. It's a mixture of younger players, understanding where zones are. I think the guy that uncovers the best, again, is Fred Moore and Colson Loveland. Those two by far. Everybody else is a work in progress. Samaj is a great grease guy, a guy that you get a screen to, you can run reverses with, all that. He still needs to learn how to get open. Can he get open with speed when it's off coverage? Yes, but we're talking about somebody in your face, because receivers, especially when you get to the National Football League or even in college, the way they evaluate you as a receiver is how does he catch the ball when it's contested, and can he get open versus man-to-man? Those are basically the two criteria that you are judged by as a receiver: how well you get open and how well you catch the ball. And man-to-man is that litmus test. So our guys can use a lot of work when it comes to getting open. But here's the thing: they're getting better. So this past game, they were open a lot more. But again, it's hard to just go out there and run route after route knowing that you got no shot to get the ball. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. I know what it's like to be in that position. If you don't feel like the quarterback can get you the ball, it's like you have to be very, very mentally strong, and you have to be focused on the team, because they were doing way more blocking. They could have put number 65 and 66 and 67 on in front of their numbers, and nobody would have known the difference. That's how much they blocked at the University of Michigan. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that they have to incorporate the pass a little bit more and throw those guys and get them involved more, because over a period of time, it weighs you down as a receiver.
So let me ask you this question. Knowing that Minnesota is not great at stopping the run, the whole object of the game is to win the game, but you also are trying to build your offense so that when you play teams like Ohio State, Oregon, other teams that are dynamic on offense and they're very good defensively in regards to being able to stop the run and force you into some certain long situations. What's the perfect game plan if you were designing it going into Minnesota?
I say you still have – Minnesota gives up a boatload of yards on the ground. So I say you still do that, and I say you try to get a comfortable lead. Here's the other thing that Minnesota does that can help you going forward. When it comes to third downs, they blitz and they play press man. They blitz and they play press man. That's a good thing for you. So there's a good portion of this game. If we can get a lead, if we can get a 10-point lead or so where we're comfortable and we can see that our defense can stop them, it's hard to, turn this into what this could be as an offense, right? This is practice time where you're calling pass plays and telling Alex, hey, look, protect the ball, but go through this progression, read this side of the field. I want you to stay over here on this side, read 1 to 2 to 3, check it down. If not, run it, right? So there's a lot of opportunity in this game. If we can get ahead with the run game to go ahead and allow the pass game to be opened up and have a little bit more balance second half where Alex Orji's getting reps, because it's a good team to get reps from. I'm not trying to disrespect them and say, hey, they won't be in a ball game. I'm saying if we can get ahead, it'll be beneficial for us to throw the ball a little bit more.
Yeah, no doubt. Before we get out of here, got about 10 more minutes or so. Just want to get your reflections, your early memories. Now you are in the middle of year 3 as our sideline reporter on radio. Obviously, Jason does a ton of great stuff for the Eagles as well. So Jason is a very busy man on weekends, traveling back and forth, living in Philadelphia. So what has this experience been like for you? And is there a memory or two beyond the obvious, right? The Rose Bowl, winning the national championship, that really stands out to you that you've experienced since being on the sidelines for us?
You know what? First of all, being around you guys is huge, right? And you guys teaching me and mentoring me down this, this road, this process. It's been great learning from you guys. That's number one. I think our crew is so, understanding, great to work with, just good people, and everyone has each other's back. And so I love that aspect of what we do. So that's number one. When it comes to the sideline, having opportunities Coach Harbaugh gave me multiple opportunities to speak with the team and to, mentor players. Guys come up with me. They have my phone number. They may shoot me a text about receiver stuff. You actually feel a genuine part of the team. So when they win, it's like, hey, we won for sure, just because of the relationship we have with the team. We're part of the team. And so I think that's big, being able to go in the locker room and see people's personalities and knowing how to adjust to that, learning these kids outside of the game of football. You start to put things in perspective for them. What it's like when they make a big play, how important it is, because you just talked to them about their frustrations a few days ago, right? So seeing Donovan Edwards pop one, knowing that, it hadn't gone as well for him at the start of the season, this particular game. So seeing him last game pop one for a big run, that was, big. So having that relationship with the players, I would say that's been great. Yes, the national championship has been great, but seeing the development of the players, that's the thing that Michigan has done that nobody else in the country has done to their level. We've seen guys come in as 3 stars, leave out as first-round picks, because the work that they put in and seeing the failures over these last 3 years and seeing where they are and how they're progressing, they have a championship mentality. That's something that you cannot take away from this team. You saw it this past game. USC fought back, came in and took the lead, but freaking Khalil Mullins and the offensive line just took over the game when it counted, because they have a championship mentality, and seeing that mentality develop has been a special thing.
Doing the sidelines, we've always had this great opportunity to go down to you for some unbelievable guests. And when you're playing in big time games like the Big Ten championship, the Ohio State matchups, Penn State, playing in the national championship game, playing against Texas, what's been your favorite sideline interview that you've done?
Oh man, I would say the Derek Jeter was great the against Texas. I think the Derek Jeter one was great. I want to ask him so many more questions, but you get a little giddy because that's the captain, right? And I'm not a Yankees fan, but I know all the work that he's done. I grew up watching that team and seeing, that mentality and how he would show up in October, and seeing how, adamant and great of a Michigan man he is. And so I thought that one was pretty special. There's been a lot. I love when the former players come back. I love, last year I had DJ Turner, and I thought that was a really good interview, just because to see him thrive in Cincinnati and play well, when, he was up and down that year. That year he had his job taken, and then he had to win it back. And to see guys just go through the adversity, that's what it's all about. You see those things. So the former players are always good.
And the post-game player interviews are always good too. I think back to two memories from last year. One, we heard you say in the aftermath of the 4th down stop at the Rose Bowl, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get anybody. It was just so chaotic. And then secondly, we did the top 10 countdown of plays from last year, and the Rod Moore one. That was your number one, if I recall correctly. And your interview with Rod Moore afterward, where he said, I called game.
I called game.
That to me was just such a, you literally got Rod Moore, 2 minutes after the biggest moment of his playing career, probably the biggest moment of his life, against the team from his home state. And there you are talking to him.
Yeah, no, that's you know what it is that they see you down there. I make sure, and Jack is with me, is that I go and I make sure that I introduce myself to everyone and let them know what my role is, let them know that I'm on their side. And, they see guys talking to me, and I make sure that they know who I am. So when I ask for an interview, most of the time, the only group that's a little bit, they just don't like that much attention is the O-line. The O-line just does not want to do interviews. It's not a bad thing at all. It's just that they are used to being the unsung heroes. They're like, dude, give the cameras to the pretty boy receivers. They like it a little bit more. But having that relationship with the guys is always good.
I do want to ask you one more question about last week's game, USC. First of all, obviously welcoming USC to the Big Ten. We talked about it in the pregame. We talked about it all game long. Like that's you don't just flip the switch and become a tough team. And you mentioned Wink and the fact that, hey, they put in some more runs. Just because they put them in doesn't mean they can execute them or be good. Michigan has been good at running the football. Since you and I can remember learning anything about football, one thing we know is that Michigan runs the football. How big was that 63-yard run by Khalil Mullins?
What other way would we move the ball down the field? Like, have you just taken the thought back? Like, we're literally running the ball in a 2-minute situation because that's what we're good at. No other team in the country is thinking about runs right there.
And we even mentioned it. Like, okay, they're a 2-minute drill. They've got a couple of timeouts.
Yeah,
but they were still huddling up.
Yeah, because the only thing that we can do without a doubt is run the ball. And talking about just sheer determination, you're not going to tackle me. I'm not allowing you, number 19. I'm not allowing you. You're not built like I am. And I'm going to step through this tackle. I'm going to will my team to victory. And that's basically what he did. On that drive, I think he solidified himself as the guy going forward when it comes to, Michigan and the running backs. I think that his sheer determination. And then when you get a chance to talk to him, what a special human being he is. Yeah. And that's what you want. You just a special person that's a team first guy that understands what's it about.
He was a linebacker in this program.
Yeah, he's willing to sacrifice his body. It's all about what the team needs. Never complains, never murmurs. Just you wouldn't want that to happen for anyone else. That's just a great person. But to see it and to hear the crowd explode is like, dude, we are the champs of running the football. Like, who else does that? This is not in Power 5, Power 4 college football. Yeah, the armed services, yes, that'll happen. But nobody in the Big Ten, nobody in the SEC where 2 minutes ago is depending on the run game to take us 60, 70 yards down the field. It was insane. I was like, dude, I couldn't believe it. I was like, did we just pop a 60-yard run?
Well, so think back. You talking earlier about recruiting. I want to get a couple fan questions before we get out of here.
Okay.
Remember last year in the Ohio State game, how many fan bases would have, within a minute, started chanting Zach Zinter's name when he was on the field injured against Ohio State, right? Yeah. The fact that the fan base knows almost, it took a while to see what number was down there, but people knew it was Zach Zinter. Like, yeah, there's definitely some things, and this kind of brings me to a question from Dakota Kid here. I think it's an interesting one. In the current college landscape, talking transfer portal, would you have played it 4 years at Michigan and not gotten the ball very often? It is certainly a decision that everybody has to make, but we hear the phrase all the time. If you win, everybody eats. Everybody has success. And for, Cornelius Johnson did not have gaudy career numbers in his time at Michigan.
Yeah.
Yet when you say Cornelius Johnson, what comes to mind?
Ohio State.
2 touchdowns against Ohio State. One where he got away and was wide open for a long touchdown. One the out where he turned it into a long touchdown. So you can still have those iconic moments. So it is definitely a discussion. I know you struggled at times early in your career, and that was a growing process for you. So it is different now where, let's face it, programs have to constantly recruit their own.
Here's the thing: you have to recruit your own, and I think Dakota is I think that's a fair question. And yes, most receivers will not have the ability, the mental strength in order to withstand, not being able to get the ball, because in their mind they're like, hey, I can get more money and I got a chance to make the pros. So most won't. But I think if you understand your value and you understand the process, you don't always need 70 catches in order to make it to the pros. Now you need that in order to become an All-American or become a Big Ten player. And a lot of these guys may want that, but you need to show yourself winning on tape. I used to always tell the guys, because I was always a captain, either at Michigan or with the Eagles, I would always tell them, don't count your catches. You can control what you can control. That's what you put on tape. Right. And if a team can see that you get open and that you're grading out at 90+% each and every week, you can make a case. You can make a case that, hey, I just don't get the targets. Don't mean I'm not open. And your agent can make that case. Matter of fact, I remember one year, I don't know if you guys were, J.J. Watt was killing it at the Texans. And we had a pass rusher in Kansas City named Justin Houston. And Justin Houston had like 16 and a half sacks. JJ had like 21 sacks. He killed it. But Justin Houston figured out that he's rushing 40% less of the time than JJ Watt. Ended up getting a heavier payday than JJ Watt because he was able to prove that case. Hey, listen, if you rush me 40% more, I'll have 30 sacks. It's not always about volume. It's about the quality of what you're putting on the field. And so guys can show that they're getting open. They may not be able to get the ball in this offense at this moment, but there's still value in playing at the University of Michigan. And because of the lights of the Big Ten and because of the prestige of Michigan, when you do something great, it's magnified. So if you have a great season, you're in the Heisman talk here at Michigan. You have a great season, you're an All-American. You have a great season, you're a Biletnikoff winner. That absolutely is true.
Yeah. A few more comments. A-Train, not even Navy is looking to run much in those situations. David, it was give me the damn ball in real life. Yeah, no doubt. A lot of agreement there. John, I'll let you have the last word with Jason. Anything else you want to ask our number 8 before you pepper him with questions on Saturday at noon?
Well, I just want to know, your thoughts now that, hey, we've got one Big Ten game in the books. Michigan is you got the loss to Texas, but they're 3-1. Your thoughts on what they need to do to be able to make the college football playoffs. And at this point, very early, knowing what Oregon is, knowing a little bit more about Ohio State, knowing a little bit about Illinois, we'll find out more about them this weekend. Do you think Michigan can be and should be a playoff team?
I think Michigan has the ingredients. They have to develop the passing game. I think the defense can be dominant, and we saw that versus USC. Like, you can have all the window dressing you want, all the receivers you want. Our D-line can whoop ass, and you better be ready for that. And so I think that one aspect of it, and our offensive line is getting better week by week. They're actually progressing, and they're actually starting to gel. So that's a good thing for us. So do I think we can finish in those top 12 teams? I think we do have an outside shot to do that. I believe if we can beat Oregon and Washington, beating Minnesota and Washington, taking care of the next opponent, but Washington will be a big one. On the road in Seattle versus a good team, a ranked opponent. So we're going to, see a lot about our team in that game. But if we can win a few games and go into the Ohio State game with one loss and put up a good performance, that will put us in the Big 12. That will put us probably in the the top 12 teams there. But we have to play extremely well. We'll have a shot with one loss, but we have to beat Ohio State and at the end of the season, right? What I'm saying is that whether we win or lose versus Ohio State at the end of the season, which we want to win, I think we're still part of that 12 teams.
Yeah, 10-2. I think it's got to be 10-2.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, and you're opening yourself up to a really tough time. Jason, always great spending time with you. Always thankful for all that you do for the broadcast, for Michigan, and man, Little Brown Jug coming up Saturday.
Let's go.
That's the perfect final word. We'll see y'all next week.